Creatively speaking, Tanzania is an incredibly rich mix of influences, from its art scene to its food to its music. I'm very proud of being Tanzanian. I always have been. I love my upbringing. I have very fond memories of my childhood that's kind of rooted in a mix of Swahili and Indian culture. So I'm a fourth generation Tanzanian. And it's really kind of shaped my view of the world, of diversity, of identity, which is pluralistic and prismatic. Swahili culture itself is a beautiful mixture of influences from all across the East African coastline, from the Horn of Africa to Indian influences and Arab influences. It's fascinating and it's incredible. I grew up in an international school, so we were exposed to so many different types of people, different cultures, religions, races from a very young age. So this has always kind of been who I am, and it's been very intrinsic. And it's that perspective that's made me a curious person. Somebody who has always looked deeper than the surface, somebody who's always expressed myself and loved the art form of telling stories no matter what the medium, and somebody who knows that everyone and everything has a story. I mean, it's New York City. Who doesn't want to be in New York City during their formative years? I will forever be shaped by my experiences at Parsons. It was my launch pad into the fashion industry, from the professors to the work that was driven by real life context, to the countless internships I endured and was excited to endure, you know, my first of which was at YSL in the buying department, fun fact. Parsons really built a foundation of knowledge for me. It provided structure to my passion and really allowed me to channel my innate ambition on a global level, amongst the best of the best, and sort of benchmark myself against that at all times. I was a girl from Tanzania. I still am a girl from Tanzania, but I was taught the power of my unique influences and my unique perspective. And that is what really unlocked this hunger to find my place in the fashion industry. That was a little more than the New York City bubble. Fashion is a creature of habit. There's a lot of expansion and growing that needs to happen in the industry, and I think the past few months has taught us that, if anything. But just a few years ago, it was virtually impossible to access an accurate contemporary picture of Africa's fashion industry beyond the lens of stereotypes, beyond the lens of certain dominating markets like Nigeria and South Africa. Acquiring that picture was challenging. And so Industrie Africa launched as a platform that offered the fashion world specifically, the industry, an opportunity to access the African fashion space in a way that they hadn't before, in a way that was intuitive to them, in a way that spoke their language, in a way that was fresh and easy. And quite frankly, in a way that didn't offer them the luxury of any more excuses as to why we weren't a part of this narrative. Post-launch, which initially happened in 2018, through the platform, through our community, through the responses, through how people were interacting with each other, how consumers were interacting with our designers. We listened and we learned. We decided to ask those questions. Who were we trying to speak to, really? What are the problems that we wanted to solve? And what did our audience and our designer community really desire from the Industrie Africa experience? And so connecting those dots, we saw an overwhelming demand for consumer product from our audience. So introducing a shoppable element into the conversation was a really natural and inevitable next step. I've been fortunate enough to have a range of experiences in different markets, and my career in publishing has really sort of straddled both the editorial side as well as the commercial side of publishing. And having that span, India, the Middle East, essentially refined my storytelling lens. It helped me learn the power of these platforms in becoming ambassadors for their market and the roles that they play in a fashion industry infrastructure. I also noticed a lot of cultural exchanges happening between the West and India and the West and the Middle East, with Indian designers and Arab designers, and wondered, where was Africa's voice in all of this? Where was that cultural exchange, that that sort of spirit of collaboration when it came to our continent? You know, there's a world of elevated conscious design in Africa that just needs to be sort of propelled forward in the right way. A curated language, a global infrastructure, and sort of powerful tools of storytelling, to me, is the answer to that, or at least contributes to that answer. Today, Industrie Africa is very much more than a retail destination. We are cultivating this 360-degree hub of contemporary African fashion. I want it to be a place of commerce, of course, but also content and community that celebrates the industry and its pioneers, that allows for us to have important conversations and dialogues around Africanness and around mainstream fashion, and redefine those perceptions that exist. There are so many elements that make up Industrie Africa's lens of curation. We curate designers based on really implicit principles, principles of distinctiveness and diversity. And when I say distinctiveness, I mean through innovation, through interpretations of their unique provenances or respective provenances. And when I say diversity, I mean diversity in their sensibility, in their thought processes, in their production processes, in their craftsmanship. Our aesthetic as Industrie Africa is really born from this idea of everyday artisanship. We're inspired by the new principles of luxury: transparency, quality, curation, this sense of consciousness in creating as well as consuming. Africa, of course, is not a monolith, so there's no single curatorial aesthetic, but we are celebrating a multitude of identities, a multitude of cultures, design nuances. Through Industrie Africa, we think it's important to tell these sartorial stories that are modern, that are uniquely expressive, and that are, quite frankly, quite intimate, and allow our customers to access them through the familiarity of a luxurious shopping experience. I wish I could give you a definitive answer here. I've always been kind of creative and inspired as a person, someone who loves problem solving through design, somebody who thrives off aesthetics, who gains energy from words and stories, and sort of understands the power or even the potency of combining those things, which is why I guess if I had to pick a route, I would say, or a route of influence, I would say magazines and the pages of magazines. Somebody who's really represented that potency for me has been Anna Wintour, which I guess is no surprise, but for me, that's somebody who I consider iconic. I think we all have a responsibility and role to play in making sure that we're having these important conversations about racial equality and representation. As a non-Black African woman myself, who cherishes her multicultural upbringing, these issues are close to my heart. I'm increasingly aware of my role in making sure that that I speak vocally against this, that we're not having these conversations down the line. Diversity and representation has always been sort of a cornerstone of what Industrie Africa is about, and I do believe we're an agent of change when it comes to that. We have a distinct commitment to ensuring African designers and other African voices are being elevated beyond regional markets and beyond stereotypes, as I've mentioned earlier. Diversity is not a trend, neither is representation. And as we're seeing, powerful global entities being held accountable for their actions, it's important to keep having these dialogues and being aware consistently of our choices as creators, as catalysts, and also as consumers. And I do believe Imprint, our editorial platform, has a role to play in this discourse, has a role to play in acknowledging this discourse. I'm a firm believer that timing is everything, and Industrie Africa came at a time that was pivotal in the change and the perception of African fashion. I feel like we were able to contribute to that narrative for that reason. In the past 2 years alone, we've seen so much increased diversity in the mainstream media. We've seen a shift, I would say, in awareness and perception. We've seen heightened empowerment of emerging voices, whether that's on the runways, whether that's in the pages of magazines, or let's look at the LVMH prize, the Woolmark prize. They only recently, I want to say about a year plus ago, opened up to the African continent as far as talent and applications are concerned. So we're definitely seeing something tangible brewing, and we're just pleased to be a part of that, and pleased to push and facilitate those conversations. My advice to those going in the industry is learn the works, each and every aspect of the industry that you can possibly get any experience in, that you can dip any toes in, do it. Make sure you specialize, but do not limit yourself. I think it's becoming increasingly important to learn how to do a multitude of things. Learning design skill is not enough. You have to know how to price your product as much as you know how to market your product, as much as you know how to tweak and streamline the supply chain. So target your dream companies, do as many internships as you can, take chances, don't limit yourself in that respect, but learn as many skills as possible, because knowledge is power. And that means that when you do find your voice and discover your purpose and discover what I like to call the what, you'll know exactly how to get there.